My name is Rhonda Walton, and I just brought an information fact sheet on some of the myths that are out there. Usually the first one that we get are, these cars are extremely expensive. They're not priced for the everyday person. So that's the first myth we would like to dispel. And as you see on the lot, there are conversions out here. So when an internal combustion engine has give up the ghost, many EV advocates will take and they will call these vehicles without working engines sleds. So they'll take a sled and they'll electrify it so that they can travel in an EV mode. So with the Leafs and the Mitsubishi Miyas and some of the other vehicles, the Fisker, the Teslas, there's been federal incentives to help us get a greener economy going, and those federal incentives were $7,500 and still are $7,500 to purchase an electric vehicle. Well, if you take that original, if you're in a tax bracket that requires you to pay taxes, that's a pretty good incentive and brings down that cost quite readily. And so then they will, through the federal program, they would install a charging station in your home free of charge. And that's a 220 unit. And it's equivalent to about $2,000. And last year we had incentives that would pay you 50% of that incentive back if you purchased it versus using the federally funded program. So now you're down $9,500 on this vehicle. So I live in Washington State, which is a suburb of Portland, and we are proud to be neighbors, and we have sales tax that we have to pay. Well, our electric vehicles are exempt from this sales tax of almost 9%. So again, you're bringing down the cost of these cars to the early adopters through these rough times, and at 3.98 miles per kilowatt, and my cost of a kilowatt is 7.98 cents, I drive my vehicle for less than 2 cents a mile. So 10,000 miles, I have $100+ worth of electricity in a year. And I don't think anybody with an internal combustion engine here can actually say that they drive for less than $10 a month.
I have a Taurus, the V6, and I figured out I'm paying about 18 cents a mile.
There you go. So, and you know, as progress comes and we can bring these costs per mile down, we're all benefiting from them. So with that myth dispelled, we would kind of like to go on to maybe some of the other myths, like how long does it take to charge? Well, if a news camera is there and they're standing in front of a 408 three-phase power supply that will charge a Nissan Leaf 80% full in less than a half an hour, and they're misquoted as saying you can charge on 16 to 18 hours on this charger, it's very dispelling, because it's actually, these are the fast chargers. Now, electric Leaf, for example, will charge 16 to 18 hours on a 110, like your coffee pot or your blow dryer. But so you can charge anywhere, there's 110 power. So range anxiety is basically based on how far do you want to plan your trip. 2 minutes? So at any rate, I thought that was the hook.
There was a Leaf going by. He missed a turn.
But you still, even with GPS in your Leaf, can get lost. So the myths around charging is quite large in range, because like I said, a 110, you can charge anywhere in the nation on a 110. It just takes you a long time. In our homes, a standard charging of an evening on our 220, like an electric stove or a clothes dryer, is about 3 to 4 hours, because you're just topping off what you've done all day. And most every day, you come home with about 70 to 80% of your energy left, because that's all we really drive during the day. But completely empty, it can take 6 to 8 hours. So you can understand why, when quotes of people standing in front of DC fast chargers that will charge in less than a half an hour, 80% full, are quoting times of a 110 that is 16 to 18 hours, these can become very mythical. So with that said, we would just like to stand corrected that you can go anywhere. Range anxiety is basically as high as your lack of planning, because it's like the first car that you got and you had $10 worth of gas and your first paycheck and you were out of gas when it's time to go to work on Monday. It just takes a little learning curve. So with that being said, some of the other myths that besides, they're expensive, or there's range anxiety, or how long does it take to charge, are, it's not, we're never going to be able to get our commerce system to get off of petroleum products. Well, we've got Freightliner back there with their big box van. We've got Frito-Lay. We have FedEx. And these people based on their costs per miles driven and the quality of the employment that their employees, I guess for the better understanding, their quality of work driving these electric vehicles is much higher than the people who are driving internal combustion engines. So with that said, yes, we have semis that draw Frito-Lay and box vans from Freightliner that are moving commerce as well as electric vehicles. Does anybody have any myths or questions that they'd like for me to try to answer?
What about the long tailpipe?
Oh, the clogged tailpipe?
Long
tailpipe.
The long tailpipe. Well, there isn't a tailpipe, so there's no internal combustion going into our atmosphere. If an internal combustion engine operating on on gasoline puts out approximately 20 pounds of carbon per gallon of gas. So for every mile, or equivalent of a gallon of gas that we travel in our electric vehicles, for every mile driven, we're saving the environment 20 pounds of carbon, CO2. Did I answer your question on the tailpipe though? Because I wasn't real sure that, because we don't have a tailpipe. There's no tailpipe, there's no antifreeze except for a little bit for the batteries. There's no oil, there's no transmission fluid. There is an electric motor that operates the vehicle, and basically we need tires, we need wipers, we need lights. Those are our replacement costs.
What about the coal plant?
Oh, the coal plants. Oh, because they're dirty. Well, that one, in Washington, we're 91% hydro, which is another myth, because they say that rain coming down is not recyclable, so I don't understand that one. But these myths are, hydro is not recyclable, or is not renewable. So in Washington, we're 91% hydro, and very few coal plants. But if that was not the case, and we were 100% coal for our electricity, we still wouldn't be near the emissions that's caused by an internal combustion engine emitting CO2 gases from a tailpipe. And pretty much similar in Oregon, the numbers are in the 70% range for hydropower. So with just the smallest amount of solar power on your roof, or on your carport, or on your garage, or producing commercial electricity, we can pass the net zero, and we can produce green energy and still drive our electric vehicles 100% carbon free. Anybody else?
I had a question. It's probably a dumb question. I was reading this where it talks about 5-hour charge just to go 70 miles. Mm-hmm. They have different ranges for different cars.
Exactly, which is why we try to dispel the myths, because each individual vehicle, especially when it comes to a conversion based on the batteries and the amount of batteries that are in there, the time of charging is different. So and there are new companies that are producing vehicles, trucks and cars, that they're using smaller battery packs. If you only need to deliver pizzas in a 5-mile area downtown, it doesn't require near the battery pack that it would, for example, of a Leaf that wants a 100-mile range when they leave the garage. So it does vary. Good question. So with that being said, the coal is a huge factor because there are places that use a lot of coal, and we in the Northwest are very fortunate that so much of our water, hydropower, is producing a lot of our energy, and I just can't say enough about the quality of the vehicle that we drive in. I can speak for myself as a two-leaf owner, or the owner of two leaves, that these ride like the luxury cars of the 70s. They're heavy, they're solid, it's a quiet, solid ride, and they're maintenance free, and like I said, at $100 per 10,000 miles is just incredible to me. And charging stations, currently the programs are free charging pretty much nationwide for your electric vehicle, and the charging levels are pretty simple. A level 1 is a 110 like we talked about with your coffee pot. Your level 2 that's in your garage in most Sears or Walgreens locations, those are 220, and then the DC fast chargers are a 408 3-phase, and my analogy of explaining these three different types of electricity into the electric vehicles is, for example, a 110 is like a swimming pool being filled by a garden hose. So it is slow, but it's sure, and it's always there, and it's always available and readily available everywhere. The 220 is pretty much the right tool for 80% of the vehicles, and the DC fast charger is like a fire hose into a teacup. So you're really getting a lot of energy in a short amount of time with a DC fast charger. These are the ones that will enable us to go a little bit outside of our local zone. But another fact is that if we did not produce one more energy producing facility anywhere in the nation that we could run this country, 70% of all of these passenger cars could be charged at night between 11 at night and 7 in the morning without one more ounce or kilowatt of energy being produced in the U.S. So the fact that, it's a drain on the grid is not true at all. It is not a drain on the grid. It just takes a little bit of knowledge, and knowledge is power for all of us. So, for example, if we did get 70% of the people in America driving electric vehicles and charging at night, 11 at night to 7 in the morning, a lot of people do not realize how much energy we waste in our morning peak hours and our afternoon peak hours, because we absolutely burn a tremendous amount of energy to create energy for the two peak times of the day. So the utility companies will explain some things to you in regards to smart grid, and smart grid is coming, and what can we do? Well, for example, with smart grid, these vehicles, if you're at work charging or you're at work charged, the utility could use these energies to help produce energy at these peak hours without having to burn, whether it's hydro or coal or nuclear or wave, whatever type of energy would fulfill our energy needs. And so the other thing is with the batteries. A lot of people say, well, these batteries are hazardous, and what are we going to do? Well, the fact of the matter is these batteries are really not hazardous, and the materials that are in them are so valuable that, again, they're recycled, they will be reused, they will be repurposed, and there's a total new verbiage coming with the introduction of electric vehicles and smart grid, because there is life after death in these battery packs that they're warranted for 8 to 10 years from the manufacturers anyway. So after that, we're hoping that 10 years down the line we will be in a smart grid situation, so we can actually keep these batteries in our homes, on our property, to use as generators for energy if we need to in certain situations, as a way for storage for the utility companies to produce these peak moments without having to waste so much of our energy. So there's life after death with these batteries. And if any of you remember the old brick phones, and I did have mine in 1986, it was the biggest briefcase, loved it, charged it about 20 hours to get about 30 minutes talk time. Now I have more intelligence on my smartphone than it took to get the man on the moon. Don't know how to use it, but it stays charged. I can talk and internet for 8 hours on this little bitty phone and still stays charged. So where's our technology going to be with batteries in 8 to 10 years? Who knows, but it's going to be better than where we're at today. So with that being said, if anybody's got any questions, I'd be glad to answer. Otherwise, I think I'm going to take my leave.
Thank you, yay, Rhonda.
Thank you, Rhonda. Appreciate that. Always good to get a little truth out there, just, to mix things up. Next up.